Hello guys, welcome to a new video here in JS Education. My name is Carlos Santana and this is the video number 31 for the course Developing a Headless CMS with TypeScript and GraphQL. So let's start. So as always, the first thing we need to do is update our dependencies using ncu-u. So right now I don't have any new dependencies, but probably you should have some. So just make sure you are installing those after you run this command. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is going to backend, source, GraphQL, resolvers, and then value. And here, on line 67, we need to validate that actually we get the value to edit with position 0. Otherwise, means that doesn't get it or doesn't exist. And here we need to add a validation else if to see if the item that entry exists and item that field ID exists as well. That means that we have values that did not exist before. So this happens, for example, let's suppose we have already a model, right, with some fields, and we already create some entries. Let's suppose we have a title, slug, content, and an author. But then after you create 2 or 3 entries, probably you want to add maybe an image for the post, which is a new field. And if you create a new entry or you edit a new entry that already exists, now you will have the image field. The problem is that when you try to save that, the image field did not have value before. So in this case, if it doesn't have value before, then we create that value. Otherwise, we update that value. So that's why we are adding this part here. The second thing is we need to go to models app. And in here, I made a mistake. So if you see, we have like 2 extra braces here, or curly braces, and we just remove one. We are going to change or work right now with React 17, the first release candidate. So if you go to your package, we are going to change the version of our React to 17.00-rc.0. That is the release candidate. And this is like to start getting like the latest versions of React 17. Right now it has exactly the same versions or the same features that the 16, but let's get the latest one. After that, we need to go to source and then app components, dashboard components, content, and then create or edit. And in here, you need to get on line 30. On line 30, you need to add get enumerations by app ID. And then in here on line 43, we also add our array of enumerations. I made a change on this function, the get value, because I had some issues validating that. So this is going to change to this. If it's editing and get values by entry, we are going to get the entry by finding. And if we have a value, we return it. Otherwise, we are going to return an empty value as an object like this. And if we don't have those values here or these conditions, we are going to return as well empty value. And then on line 60, after the initial values, we need to put this if here. If the field type is drop down, Then we are going to get the enumeration ID, getting that from the field default value. And then we get the enumeration from get enumeration by app ID, finding that for the ID of the enumeration. And we push that enumeration to our array of enumerations. Basically, you need to pass that array to custom fields like this. Okay, so now we need to go to custom fields, index, and then in here we are going to import from fogg-ui the select component. Also, you need to receive your enumerations now. Also, we are going to, we are already receiving the action, but we don't have it specified here, so we need to specify the action. Also, the set values and the enumerations prob. And we need to add a function here to render a dropdown before the return, which is gonna be this one, render dropdown. We pass a field. We get the enumeration ID from the field that default value. Then it's the same thing. We find the enumeration by the ID. And basically, the thing is that we are saving those enumerations as JSON in our database, as a JSON string. So that's why with JSON.parse, we are going to get the actual JSON values from that string. And then if the action is equal to edit, then basically we are going to get, let me remember, what is this? Values of field ID that split, column, position 1. Oh yeah, so, okay, I remember now. So from the select, this one, basically we are saving the values in a string. Like for example, I don't know, like for example, if we are saving fruits, it's gonna be like apple is the option and the value is apple, like with lowercase, and then comma, and then probably mango like that. So the select is saving the values like this. So basically, when we split with the colon, we are getting the actual value, not the label, just the value. And then we are finding that option in our options array. And then if we find that option, we are going to mark as a selected. You will see how works that part a little bit later, because basically here on this select is how we are handling like our drop down with this component. And basically here you need to return the select component with the enumeration identifier, the label with the enumeration name. The onClick is going to receive an option and a value. And then if we have those, we use our set values to update our field that we represent with the field identifier. And if you see here, we are saving the value as option colon value. That's why here we are splitting with this column here. And we pass our array of options here. So that's gonna be rendering or drop down or select. And basically after text 133, yeah, after this one, let me check that part. Yeah, after that, you need to render if the field type is equals to dropdown, then we are going to render the dropdown and pass the field. So that's it, whatever we need to do in this file. And then now you need to go to models and you need to go to create, you need to create a new model called create enumeration model.tsx, and let me copy this model here. Okay, so basically, let me do a little bit smaller this part. So basically here, we are going to use the mutation create enumeration mutation. And this is gonna be a model to create a new enumeration. So it's going to work similar to the way we create models, but we are going to create enumerations with this. Basically, our values is enumeration name, identifier, description, and app ID. Then we have our enumeration values, and then our required fields. We get our mutation here. It's bigger. We have our mutation, create an enumeration mutation. Then in our handle submit, we are going to ask for enumeration name and identifier. But then if we don't have values, because the thing is that we are using a component called, let me see if it's here, tags from fogg-ui. And with that, you need to add values. You write it and you press enter and it's adding like tags. So I'm using that. So basically that's gonna be saved on the enum values. So if there is no values, if length is equal 0, and also there is no empty values, because this is going to return false if this validation doesn't, if those has values, we are going to reassign, that's what this is a let, we are going to reassign empty values with enumeration values as true, meaning that that field is empty. But if we already have something in this, which is going to return an object, we just pass that enumeration values equals to true. And that's the only difference. Everything else is exact the same way we have been handling the models. If we get empty values, we just mark the required fields. And then we set timeout for 2 seconds. We get the values from the array and we transform them into a stringify. If you remember, I told you that we are saving the values of the enumerations as a strings, as a JSON string into our database. So here's where we are doing that. Basically, we are executing create enumeration mutation and we are passing just, we're passing the entire object of values. If it was created correctly, then we're going to redirect to dashboard, app ID, master, schema enumeration, and any enumeration that we have here. Everything is the same. We just have the form here to put the enumeration name, identifier, description. The values is using, as I told you, the tags component. So on the get tags, we have like e values or something like that. And then basically this is gonna be an array that returns this component. So if it's higher than 0, the length, then we set our enum values or state. So that's how we are retrieving the data from the tags component. And then we just have 2 buttons, cancel and create enumeration, and that's it. Okay, so now you need to go to models and then create field model. And in here, you need to also import select from fogg-ui. Then on the data, you need to get enumerations array. And then you need to you need to specify your state for enumeration, set enumeration. And in the line 100, basically we are going to say here, if the type that we are passing is a dropdown, then our values, that default value is gonna be the enumeration that we are passing there. Then here we need to do something similar. So basically this is going to change for a let, and we are going to do something similar that we did in the last model. So if our data type is drop down and we don't have empty values, but also we don't have enumeration, basically we are saying that the enumeration field is empty. If we already have something but not the enumeration, basically we just append that node to our object of empty values. 154. So in here, after the use effect, oh wait a second, 148. No, before the use effect, we need to create a function called render dropdown, and basically here we are going to map our enumerations array, and we are going to convert those into option and value to be able to render those enumerations in our dropdown or select component. So once we have that enum options, basically we are passing those enum options here. And when we click on some value, we are taking that enumeration and setting with set enumeration right here. So basically for example, let's suppose you want to create a new drop-down field on your schema, and then each drop-down needs to have an enumeration list, right? So you need to select which enumeration you want to use for that field. So that's why we're doing that. And then here on 222, you need to do this. If that data type is equals to dropdown, then we render the dropdown. That's it on this file. Now you need to go to models sidebar, and in here from the const links you need to include enumeration link. Then we are going to import the create enumeration model. We are going to create that as well. We already created this one, sorry, but we are going to use that. You need to specify a local state for is open enumeration and set is open enumeration for the model. Here we are getting the enumeration from our app object. And basically in here, you need to render the model, create enumeration model. Handle enumeration model. Okay, I think I missed this method here. Handle enumeration model, like this. And line, let me see. Okay, so in here, if you see, we have already our models, right? But what we need to do is basically copying all these two blocks and put it right here. But now the other one is gonna be, instead of models, it's gonna be enumerations. And then this batch is going to run handle enumeration model. And this models wrapper is going to change for this enumerations.map, and then we add the enumeration to our router with the enumeration identifier, and we link using enumeration link constant like this. So this is for the sidebar, to display our enumerations. And then if you go now to a schema declarations index, in here on line 16, we are going to receive now our enumerations. And then we are going to change the height of this create field model based on a condition. So basically it's gonna be like this. If the field type is equals to dropdown, then we increase more the height. Otherwise, if it's any other field, we just use 700 pixels here. Okay, and then in our declarations, basically if we have a field declaration equals to dropdown but doesn't have enumerations, we are going to omit or skip that render for that declaration. So now inside a schema, you need to create a new folder called Enumerations, and then we are going to create a file for the styles, enumerations.scss. Let me put it in here. So those are the styles. We are going to use flex, and we are going to display all the enumerations in one page. I mean, the enumerations are very small, so I don't want to like create each page or a page for each enumeration. So I'm going to put all of them in the same page, like making blocks of enumerations. And then here you need to create the index.tsx file. And let me copy this component. So this component is who will render our enumerations. So basically here we get the data and the router. We get the enumerations by app ID from data. If we don't have it, we just render an empty div. And then in here we have our main layout, and we render our enumerations. And basically we are mapping or get enumerations by app ID. And remember that the values of the enumerations are saving as a JSON string, so we are parsing using json.parse to get the actual values as an object. Well, it's an array actually, so that's why here we are able to loop the options that we are displaying. So it's just a span. It's like a block that we are going to show for each enumeration. So that's it for this file. Now we need to go to schema index, and in here you need to import this component that we just created. After declarations, you import the enumerations, and then on the line 45 from data, you need to now graph get enumerations by app ID and section. And here we are going to validate if the section is enumerations, we are going to render that component, and we are going to avoid to render the others components. So we are going to use pretty much the same component of a schema to render our enumerations when we are on the section of enumerations. Okay, and then in our declarations component down here, we need to pass the enumerations using get enumerations by app ID. In these declarations, I think we already defined that way. I'm getting this error. Enumerations, declarations. Oh, we need to, let me just check really quick this file. Well, we need to pass this, and basically this is gonna be an array. So we need to pass the declarations and the enumerations here. Okay, so that's it. And then schema index, okay. Okay, so now you have to go to GraphQL, and we need to create the folder enumerations. Oh, we already have it. I think we already specified in the last video that create enumeration, yeah, and get enumeration by app ID. Yeah, we already have those, so I'm not sure why on my PR appears, but that's fine. Okay, so now we should go to pages, dashboard, app ID, model name, section model. And here on line 21, we need to import the get enumerations by app ID. And basically here, after this get values by entry ID, we are going to call or get enumerations by app ID. And we are going to skip it if we don't have the app ID. And then this validation, now we need to add an extra validation with the section, only if it's section equals model and we don't have the model query data. And also if we don't have data enumerations by app ID, we return empty div. And the last thing is that we need to pass this value, data enumerations by app ID. So basically, every time we access to an application, we are going to pull the enumerations for each one. Okay, so let's run our code and let's see what are the enumerations. Okay, we have an error here saying GraphQL enumerations create enumerations model not found. Okay, models, this one. Okay, create enumeration. It supposes it already exists. GraphQL enumerations, create enumeration that oh, okay. I made a mistake in here, and this one needs to say dot mutation, and the other needs to say dot query. That's why it appears on my pull request. Okay, so let me close this part and open it again, and now it should be fixed. Okay, let me remove this part, and then if I do / create enumeration, okay, perfect. Okay, let's say that fixed the problem. Okay, you know what, let me clean up all the database. So we run this project clean, and I'm show you how everything works. Okay, let me remove the database. Okay. Okay, we log in here, we create our application blog. We are going to create our, you see here, now I get the enumerations on the sidebar. Of course, we don't have anything right now. So I create a model, and that's gonna be post, for example. And then inside, we are going to create a title, like the same fields we always create. Title, slug, content, and then author. Okay, now let's suppose we want to create enumeration, right? So we click here, we are going to get this model. The enumeration, if we click here, we are going to mark the required values. So our enumeration name is gonna be, for example, categories. And then this is the tags component that I told you before to add values. So for example, a category is gonna be a React, a PHP, JavaScript, Angular, Vue, etc. It's like probably a categories for my blog post, right? Maybe HTML5, whatever. We create this enumeration. And now we are going to see the enumerations in here. Here we have React app. These are just like to display the information, right? So let's suppose we want to create another one called fruits. And let's suppose we want to add here mango, apple, pear, peach, banana, etc. Then we create that enumeration. And now we are going to have here the list. So basically enumeration is a list of things, right? And now let's suppose you want to go to your model post and you want to say, you know what, I want a drop down here. And then this drop down, if you see, is adding this part that says enumeration. So if you click on any other, you don't see that. You only see this on drop down. And here you will say, okay, I want to add my field category, which is going to have a enumeration. What's wrong here? Okay, something is wrong. Looks like the probably in the query we are not pulling correctly. So in here, this is the get app by ID. Okay. So we are getting the enumerations correctly. So now let me check why it's not rendering those. So, okay. So basically here in our page, this one, in here we have this, right? So we can console here like saying data enumerations by app ID. Okay, we get the data correctly, so that's fine. And then the second thing to debug this part is that this is going to a schema, right? So here we select our schema index. In here, from the data, we are getting the values of the enumerations, and we are passing those to the declarations. And that part works. If you see here on the declaration, oh, that's the thing that is not working. Okay. So then something in here is broken. So let's take a look on that. Okay, so the first thing here, let's check if we get the data there. Yeah, we get it correctly. Perfect. And then let's go to declarations. And then here on declarations, we are going to console enumerations declaration. Okay. We are getting the values there. And finally, we need to check why it's not working then. Oh, okay, I think, let me see. This is declarations. Okay, there you go. Okay, I found the problem. So the problem here is that I'm not passing this array into the data for create field model. So I missed that part. So we just need to pass the enumerations here. That's why it's not passing the array. But that's good because at least you know now how I'm debugging this application, and it's very straightforward. Okay, so now it should work. If we go to the drop down and we say, okay, I want to add the category field, and I select the enumeration, categories or fruits. So this is related to categories. We create that field, is right here. And then we go to content and we create a new entry and say, okay, my post one, my, well, let's say my React post one, we add some content, the author, and then the category here is going to have the values of the enumeration. Remember that I add the values React, PHP, JavaScript, Angular, Vue, HTML, etc. So I select React, I save it. Now if I want to edit this entry, we are going to select the value that we already push here, and we are going to mark as a highlight. I'm not sure if you can see this, that is with a little bit with a different gray color in here. But then if we refresh, we still keep the same, right? Because we are getting the values from the database. So we can like update this post and then change the category to JavaScript, for example. And that's basically how you show that. And the category is being saved like this: JavaScript colon JavaScript, like labeled, or option colon like the value, right? So that's it for this video. I don't want to make it any longer. I know it's kind of hard to keep tracking all these changes, but remember that if you have any question, please feel free to join our Slack community. The link is on the description. And also, if you really like those videos and you want to support me, please help me sharing those videos and subscribe to this new channel. So that's it. Thank you for your time and see you in the next video. Bye.